Hey guys, shooting handguns is not easy. If you want to shoot them quickly and accurately, it takes a lot of practice, way more so than any sort of long gun that gives you 2 or 3 points of contact, depending on how you hold them, depending on the height of your optic. It's also made a lot more difficult because if you go on the internet and try to find advice for how to shoot handguns, you're going to have to sift through a whole lot of bogus FUD lore. One of those pieces of nonsense advice that I have made a video about in the past, probably like 3 years ago now, is about trigger finger placement. The idea that you should always pull the trigger with the pad of your finger. That's not 100% bad advice, but it also is completely contingent on the size of your hands and the size of the gun that you're shooting, and essentially your comfort level with that type of trigger finger placement. There's some advice that's even worse than that, because at least the trigger finger placement thing will work for some people. I think there are multiple quality levels to the advice that you'll get when you're trying to learn how to shoot handguns better. Some of it is just straight up inaccurate and wrong, and you shouldn't pay attention to it at all. Some of it is potentially useful, contingent on the person actually doing the shooting. That sort of stuff should never be given in a prescriptive manner, like a hey, you should do this, but rather offered up by the instructor as like a hey, this worked for me, maybe you should give it a shot. I know that's really difficult. If someone's trying to teach you how to shoot a handgun, they're probably just going to default to what has worked for them, even if some of it is not the only way to do something, but actually will vary from person to person. Then there's advice that may have worked for somebody, but it's not a good idea to follow that advice if you're starting from scratch. For example, wrapping your support hand fingers around the trigger guard. There's no reason to do that. If that's how you've learned to shoot and you're able to shoot that way, it's probably still totally fine to keep doing it. But if you're new to shooting handguns, I don't think anybody would recommend that you actually do that. Not the least which because we also kind of want you to put a weapon light on there, and then you're just not going to be able to do that anymore. Well, now you've wasted a lot of effort trying to learn with your finger on the front of the trigger guard. And then of course there's going to be baseline advice, which is pretty much universal, and that's going to be extremely basic stuff like try to maintain a firm grip on the handgun, or how sight alignment works. That stuff is not subjective, and it really is just like the basic mechanics of how a firearm functions. So another one of my pet peeves when it comes to shooting handguns, similar to the trigger finger placement FUD lore, is the obsession over flinch and eliminating your flinch when you're shooting. Some people think that you can and should train yourself not to flinch using such drills as the ball and dummy drill, where you put a mixture of dummy rounds into your magazines and you try to surprise yourself with a dud round to induce a flinch, so you catch yourself flinching. And then I guess the idea is that you just, that's a reminder to yourself like, oh, I need to stop doing that. But that's complete bullshit. Handgun shooting is mostly about timing your recoil control with the break of the trigger. One of the reasons why it's difficult to switch between different handgun platforms, because differences in how long the trigger pull is, the weight, where it breaks in the trigger guard, all that sort of stuff is going to change your timing. Handgun shooting is explained at Thunder Ranch as a matter of cadence, which I think is a really interesting way to talk about it, because you have a whole lot of stuff that you're trying to do at the same time, like prep and pull the trigger, get the sights on target, manage recoil, all that sort of stuff. And if your timing is wrong, flinch is bad. But if your timing is good, flinch is recoil control. And that's why instead of just saying flinch, there are better terms to use to describe it, and they are pre-ignition push and post-ignition push. It's pushing the gun back into position after recoil, which is what you want to do because you want to get the gun back on target faster and shoot again. The problem is really only if you're pushing before the shot breaks. Now, how are you going to tell if what you're doing is pre-ignition push or post-ignition push? Well, you could get a hammer-fired gun and a high-speed camera, and then watch the footage back and see if you start to counteract the recoil forces before the hammer has even completely fallen. Well, that'd be one way to do it. The other way is to look at the target and see if you're missing or not. I think if you miss the target, you know you've done something wrong, and hopefully you're paying enough attention to yourself as you shoot that you can get at least some idea of why you might have missed. Sometimes that'll be like, oh yeah, I did not wait for the sights to settle. I didn't have a super clear sight picture and I took the shot anyway. Whoops, okay, I know why that happened. I know what went wrong there. Sometimes you're going to be like, nope, I felt like I started to push before the trigger broke, or as the trigger broke. You should be able to get a feel for that stuff. Maybe it'll take some practice. Maybe it'll take some getting in touch with your, oh man, I almost said kinesthetic self, but that's probably not even a real term. Not even Travis Haley would say that. Hey guys, today's video has been brought to you once again by our channel sponsor, Venture Surplus. purveyor of the finest military surplus clothing, gear, and MREs. At the end of a nice long day at the range, you gotta relax somehow. And you can't sustain yourself off of just Larabars, though God help me, I have tried. Venture Surplus stocks the classic MREs and the cold weather versions, which have much tastier food. It's dehydrated Mountain House stuff, but in a more compact packaging. But what they've also started recently doing is stocking individual MRE entrees and sides, which is good because those are often the only parts of the MRE that are actually tasty and good for you. A lot of the other stuff in MREs is really just there to sustain people who have to live off of MREs for weeks or maybe months at a time. That's not me. I hope that's not you. Anytime civilians like Brassfax and I speak fondly of MREs, it's because they're a fun thing to do every once in a while when you're on a hike or a range trip or, camping or something like that. One of the entrees or sides that I've always wanted to try is the pizza slice, because it was added to the repertoire of the MREs not too long ago. But it was hard to find a complete MRE that included pizza. You had to specifically pay for one, way overpay, because people were like, oh, it's pizza, it's got to be awesome. Or you just had to buy random selections of MREs and hope that eventually you got the one with the pizza slice in it. And also, a lot of people selling MREs are probably taking the ones that are really in high demand, selling them individually at a markup, and then selling all the trash ones as like a random MRE. So you can just go on Venture Surplus and you can just buy the cheese pizza slice separately, a la carte, if you want to try it, or if I don't know, maybe it's delicious. I don't know yet. I don't know if you're supposed to heat these up. Fuck. I'm heating this up because I had a spare FRH, and I thought I should try a warm pizza slice. Cold pizza is more of a breakfast food. Seems to be working. So my dinner tonight is going to be cheap domestic beer and MRE pizza, served lukewarm. Seeing as I had to fold up the pizza slice packet in order to get it inside the FRH, that does make me suspect you're just supposed to eat that cold, like it's an alternative to the applesauce bun or whatever, or the toaster pastry. There's nothing quite like the ambiance of the sun going down, the soft sizzle of an FRH, the smell of off-gassing hydrogen. It's where a man belongs. All right. I don't think we're going to get a whole lot more juice out of this FRH, so pizza slice, cheese. This might have done better as a cold pizza slice. Whoa. This makes third grade lunchroom food look borderline Michelin star worthy. Anyway, thank you to Venture Surplus for supporting this channel. Check out the link in the video description to Venture Surplus. There's a coupon code that'll save you some off your order. And also thanks to Venture for finally fulfilling my years-long dream to taste the pizza slice MRE. Well, it tastes of pizza. Very heavy on the, maybe oregano. I feel like the fine people at the Natick Food Labs have attempted to replicate the feel of a pizza. The base is like a slice of focaccia bread. Not really pizza crust. It's very thick and very soft, very pillowy. And then the top is, like a very heavily spiced layer of sauce with a carpeting of cheese-adjacent material. Yeah, it's pretty good. And I think warming it up was probably the right move. Although I don't think I'd mind eating it cold every now and then. But I'm really glad I didn't pay like $40 for a cheese pizza MRE. Alright, back to the show. So how do you improve the timing of your recoil control? I think it's a matter of really understanding the feel of the trigger on your specific gun. Like I said, unfortunately, when you switch between different platforms, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to sort of keep them all separate because it's very much a muscle memory sort of thing. I'm friends with a bunch of Asian people, so unfortunately I am forced to shoot 2011s on a pretty regular basis, and there's a pretty massive difference between a 2011 trigger and a striker-fired trigger, like on a Glock MP 2.0 or whatever. How do you get a good feel for the trigger on your gun? Dry fire, live fire, and going slower. If I'm taking somebody who has really not shot that well or is having a really hard time shooting handguns, and I'm trying to help them out, I just tell them to go slower, and then slower, and then slower, and then as slow as they can possibly go, and then slower than that. And then every time they shoot, you yell at them to be even slower. Because that's one of the only ways that I've ever found to actually get people to finally start to feel why there is a mismatch in timing between their recoil control and when the trigger breaks. A lot of dry fire definitely helps, because you'll start to understand where is the trigger breaking, how far back is it breaking, how much force do I need to apply, how long does it take me to pull typically, all that sort of stuff. So do a lot of dry fire, shoot really slow for a while until you're sure that you're actually getting, a proper sense for the trigger pull. And for the love of God, don't do ball and dummy drills. I think a skill that is pretty important to have as a pistol shooter is, I think, what a lot of people will refer to as throttle control. And that's the ability to look at a target or look at a shot that you need to take and say, hey, I need to go slower than usual for this because it's farther away or the target is smaller, or perhaps I need to take a more precise shot on a target due to whatever's being presented to me, or armor or something like that. And being able to say, hey, I've just been hammering fast fire rounds on the big ass paper. Now I got to go transition to the little steel at the far end of the bay. I can't just pull the trigger and yank through as fast as I would when I'm shooting on the big paper. I'm going to have to slow it down a little bit. Another useful skill for shooting handguns is the ability to just completely turn off your flinch and recoil control at a whim, in order to do things like confirm your sights are on, or your zero is good, or, maybe your gun hasn't completely fucking broken. And that's not something you do through practice. That's just a mind game of telling yourself, hey, I don't give a shit if this gun recoils all the way out of my hands when I pull the trigger, because what I'm interested in right now is 5 perfect rounds on paper so I can see if my red dot is actually zeroed at this range or not. So we're going to do a little bit of an experiment with ball and dummy and see if I can prove my point, or if I've just been talking out my ass this whole time. Alright, in an attempt to prove this as much to myself as to you guys, I'm going to try to do the classic ball and dummy thing. So I've got a couple of snap caps. They're in pretty bad shape, and I'm missing one. So we're going to have 2 per magazine, load 10 rounds, 2 of which will be snap caps. And I'm probably going to know which ones they are, because snap caps don't weigh anything close to as much as real bullets. But then I'm going to mix the magazines around, right? So there's still a chance. That's a snap cap. That's a snap cap too. God damn it, this sucks. This fucking sucks, bro. I'm looking up in the air, and I can tell. It's pretty fucking obvious. I'm just going to pretend that I don't know what's going on in there. Okay, this is not going to work, but we're going to try it anyway. I'm going to stick these in my pocket, and I'm going to grab one at random. Okay, we're going to attempt to do this science, but I'm not really sure it's going to work well. I'm going to grab one of my 2 preloaded magazines at random. Auto forwarding, I hate this gun, 0 out of 10. So first thing, I'm just going to shoot normally, see if I can allow myself to be surprised by a snap cap and demonstrate some flinch. Ideally, this is not going to cause me to miss anything. Unless there's a snap cap on top of the magazine. Or, more likely, auto forwarding just got me killed in the streets, because the slide dropped before it was all the way, the magazine was all the way in, and there is nothing in the chamber. So when I said 0 out of 10, I was being ironic, because I actually really liked this gun up until 14 seconds ago. Well, shit. Okay, so this is just normal shooting to see if I can demonstrate an obvious flinch. That was pretty flinchy. Ooh, that was a little flinchy too. And then I missed the last one. Fucking classic. I don't know if I can induce an auto forwarding. Hopefully that was a fluke, because I really, really hate auto forwarding. Okay, so this time I'm going to attempt to just dial out my recoil control and see if I can not flinch on a single one of these things. Steady as a fucking rock, baby. You're free not to trust that demonstration because of how much time I spent complaining about auto-forwarding and the fact that I'd loaded those magazines myself, so it's certainly possible I had a pretty good idea of where those dummies were in the mix of balls. Even so, hopefully you can trust my demonstration was authentic, if not exactly scientific. One last thing to notice, this is not the same thing as the idea that you should be able to pull the trigger all the way through without disrupting your sight picture. That is a separate issue. A lot of people will talk about having a firm enough grip on the pistol that you can just pull the trigger without disrupting your sight alignment, and that is a good skill to have. That doesn't really have anything to do with recoil control. You are still going to want to counteract the forces of recoil in order to get the gun back on target. I assume. I mean, maybe you don't, but that'd be weird. It is possible to grip the gun strongly enough and pull the trigger smoothly enough that you won't disturb your sight alignment. I don't think it's possible to grip the gun strongly enough that it does not recoil. Even the humble marksman with his massive arms that look like fucking cable from the Wolverine comic books. I forgot what X-Men was called for a second. Holy crap, I'm tired. Anyway, even he experiences recoil. The man is 6'5", 240, and shoots better than anybody I've ever met in person before. And yeah, the guy still has to counteract recoil, so yeah. You're not gonna just dial out recoil by getting juiced. Anyway, hopefully that is useful for you. It's not really advice so much as it is my attempt to equip you with the knowledge to discard advice that doesn't actually work. But yeah, I don't know, if you ever see somebody with their trigger finger wrapped all the way around the trigger, consider the fact that they might just be bigger than you, and that their finger needs to do that because they're bigger than you are. I don't know. I suffer no delusions that this is going to change the way people comment on YouTube videos, but hey, it might help you out. Alright, thank you for watching, guys. If you'd like to support the channel, check out the links in the video description and consider clicking on some of them. Alright. See you later.